Thank you for watching my Government Funding for Education presentation. My name is India Leach and this presentation is for EDU 625, Issues in Education. Currently, over 95% of U.S. schools rely on government funding in order to maintain their education system, in which case the funding is typically provided by state and local governments through various state and income taxes. However, despite our booming economy, our schools have seen significantly lower budgets in recent years. In addition, funding continues to be prejudicial and nonsensical when it comes to who, why, and how much is provided. Still, funding increases are not based on need. Therefore, the result in some schools, the most in need, are required to do more with less. The intended purpose for this presentation are students and educators, as they are the ones at the mercy of federal and state governments, who are in essence at the center of school funding or lack thereof. Federally, Congress sets an amount annually through the process of appropriation, where funds are dispersed through the Department of Education and other funding agencies. Federal education funds are distributed via grant programs, direct funding, and by a series of formulas. However, direct funding varies from state to state, from 5% to 16%. All in all, the funding budget accounts for less than 3% of the total federal budget. States disperse funding based on spending. Higher income states spend roughly 3 times what low income states spend, and are therefore provided more funding for education. This translates to better education opportunities for those in better zip codes, while those who hail from less affluent areas have limited or less than desirable academic environments, outcomes, and opportunities. The outlying issue is not the control our governing bodies have over the funding, but the formulas they use and the way in which they disperse funds. The fact is, we ought to do more to make sure our students in every state have a fair shot at education. Additionally, states should be required to distribute funds equally and fairly, as educators and their students who require these essential funds are at the mercy of whether their school or districts qualify for the appropriate funds via the given formulas. Federally, essential change starts with equalizing allocations of resources from Every Student Succeeds Acts, or ESSA, across states, meaning high poverty states receive an equal opportunity of receiving the fair share of federal funds. Second, reinforce the rules of ESSA that require a balance of qualified and experienced teachers across schools serving more and less advantaged students. Districts and concentrated need require a larger quantity of qualified teachers to meet the needs of all their students. Requiring states that receive federal funds to report on achievement progress, well-qualified teachers, strong curriculum opportunities, books, materials, and equipment, such as science labs and computers, and adequate facilities, as well as a plan for future progress. Regarding essential change for states, I've chosen to highlight the following. The redesign of school finance formulas that focus more on pupils' needs, weighted student formulas that add additional funds for pupil characteristics such as poverty, limited English proficiency, foster care or homelessness status, and special education status. Develop a reliable core revenue base, rather than a bevy of categorical programs that come and go, creating instability in local budgets and constraints on how funds are spent, as well as ensure high-quality preschool for students who may have fewer learning opportunities, such as children from lower-income families, new English learners, and children with disabilities. Such services provided ahead of time in order to assist in closing the gap that would otherwise be present at the entry of kindergarten, which in turn will help reduce costly supports needed later, such as special education services and remedial education. Additionally, enable districts to hire and keep well-prepared educators under resource schools through stronger education preparation, induction and mentoring for novice and ongoing professional learning, as well as providing comparable salaries and working conditions. States who have made progress towards adequate and implemented standards and accountability systems, in addition to holding their legislative representatives accountable for these, effective, fair, and sufficient funding for all schools, and most importantly for their students. This slide shows an illustration of funding within the United States. Principles of change. Number 1, make Title I formula fair and more transparent. The fact is, currently funds are distributed through 4 complex formulas, focusing on far too many eligibility requirements, weighted systems, and purposes. These 4 formulas include basic grants, concentration grants, targeted grants, and education incentive grants. These complexities make it difficult for policymakers, school leaders, as well as the public to comprehend and make sense of how such funds are dispersed to schools and throughout their districts. Furthermore, these formulas are making it increasingly difficult for federal laws and regulated programs to appropriate, incentivize meaningful and beneficial actions at the state and local level because of the hodgepodge of eligibility requirements. A solution for this is to condense, consolidate, and simplify these formulas in order to make a more straightforward and predictable method of allocating such funds. Number 2, provide funds to support students living in areas of poverty. 67% of schools within the U.S. receive Title I funds, despite the fact that many of these schools should not be considered as qualifiers, as they fail to fall within the parameters of need, and therefore they consume, use, and deplete such funds that are of far better use for more at-risk districts and schools for their students who are in fact in need. As a result, unfortunately, this wide delegation of Title I dollars is a problem. As it has been observed, this money and funds has a greater impact and ability to support when it is invested to improve education of low-income students who have fewer means of support, as well as the greatest need when compared to their more affluent peers. The fact is, when these precious Title I funds are provided to districts and schools and students within the middle class and affluent areas, it's not providing its proper purpose. It's not serving the students it was meant to serve. The solution for this is, in order to ensure that more at-risk students are given a fair shake, now and in the future, affluent districts must be excluded and ultimately ineligible from receiving such funds. In turn, more funds will be made available for students living in concentrated poverty, and therefore these federal dollars will have a greater impact and be provided directly to schools and higher populations of students in need. Number 3, leveraging funds to incentivize evidence-based state funding formulas. The U.S. is one of 3 countries that provides fewer resources for educating students living in poverty than their peers. Title I reform helps rectify this problem by providing a greater incentive for states to create progressive funding structures. The solution, implementing progressive funding systems, allocating resources based on student need, providing more money to students with greater need. And then we have number 4, eliminating bias against rural states and mid-sized cities, implementing the small state minimum. Ultimately, several formulas tend to bias against states with moderate large populations and significant rural poverty. Several states include Texas, California, and Colorado. An example of this, Detroit and Houston receive more money per child than Flint, Michigan, and San Antonio, Texas, even though both of these smaller cities have much larger percentages of poverty. Again, the cause of this funding disparity is once again the formula itself, the way that it is broken down and used to provide money. That is the issue. The solution, the formulas need to be revamped in order to provide fair funding for to meet the needs of these moderate-sized cities who face significant disadvantaging outcomes. We need to fix it now so that we can help these kids now and in the future. Number 5, making sure to ensure that states and districts do not and will not lose funds or benefits when modifications to the formulas happen. Still, while the formula is unfair, we need to make sure and take into consideration that changes will occur. It will affect what funding is provided to states and districts, and we need to make sure that that is taken into account so that nobody is shortchanged even while these changes are happening, because we don't want to leave schools and districts unfairly funded when these allocations take place. The solution, a hold harmless provision must be put into place in order to keep states and their current funding allocations level and dedicate new funding to states that have been shortchanged in prior years and are now on track to receive their fair allocation. The outcomes, best case funding becomes more aligned to need, more fair, and also worth noting, funding is just one aspect of the education system, and a large reason why certain districts or groups of students have yet to receive the education they need. However, digging in a bit deeper, we do have a cultural issue stemming from the top down. Funding, districts, parents, students, and even community involvement are all at play. Ideally, it is simple enough to fix. It would take time and hard work and flexibility and determination, but we are required to do what's right. Our culture has created this system. Therefore, in order to change the system, we need to examine our expectations and our long-term goals for our youth. If turning out subpar graduates is what we want, watching our dropout rates increase and is acceptable, then staying the course is, I guess that's what we should do. But it's worth fixing, and it's possible. We need to fix it now. However, if we seek to increase student progress and graduation rates for our at-risk youth, change is required, and it has to start with us. So, thank you for watching my presentation, and that's it. Thank you.